What's going on, guys? It's Mohammed, the host of Aware Alpha, and welcome to episode 65, 66. I'm not even sure where we're at anymore. So, guys, just want to say I'm super grateful for the listeners, all the feedback that I've been getting, and just the fact that people are listening to the podcast comparing to last year when I started this around this time. It was really just a vision, and we were like recording things, and I wasn't even sure what I was going to do with the podcast to this year where we have listeners all over the world. And you guys are, and I always say on the podcast, I know I have a good voice and you can listen to the podcast for entertainment purposes, but mostly my intentions are for you guys to listen to the podcast and take something away from it, something that you can start implementing in your day-to-day life to become your most aware self, to become your most loving self. What is it that you desire in life? And my intentions are always to share something of value, and so you can actually take that away. And of course, everyone that's been listening to the podcast the last few months, I was talking about bringing some guests onto the podcast. And last few weeks we have done some interviews and be releasing some of these episodes, and it's been amazing. And today I'm excited as usual, and I feel grateful. I'm not sure how the universe, how I was able to manifest such an amazing circle of individuals that I can reach out to and have on the podcast. And today I have someone very special. I consider a divine feminine, and I started following her on social media probably a year and a half, 2 years ago. And just as I was going through the phases of, learning more about masculine and feminine energy and Tantra and just all these different concepts that I was really just getting exposed to while I was doing my so-called inner work, we can call it. And yeah, I could talk about it forever, but so yeah, special guest that we have on the show today. She goes by the name of Lana Shay. And I just want to tell you guys a little about her so you guys get a little idea of who she is. So her whole adult life, she is pretty much committed to holistic practices, personal growth, and cognitive liberty. Her deepest passion is unlocking optimal human potential through embodiment practices and a pure holistic lifestyle. She's been leading dance, yoga, and movement since 2009, as well as training in tantric arts. She's the #1 international best-selling author of Conscious Love, Enlightened Relationships, and Soulful. 11 love experts reveal their secrets. She's currently working on her memoir. I pronounced that a little wrong, I know. Erotic Hustle, and her new psychedelic consulting company, Into Ventures. For the last decade, she's worked as an exotic dancer in gentlemen's clubs across America. I like how I said that, where she cultivated the skills and techniques offered in her classes and one-on-one private sessions with women and couples. Lana, I just want to say thank you for jumping onto the podcast with me and just sharing your presence with us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me on, for sure.
It's my pleasure. I have one question that comes right off the top of my head as I was just saying that is what's one thing that you have, I feel like you probably learned a lot, but what's one thing that you have learned about men when you are an exotic dancer, let's say for that decade or so? Could be bad or it could be good.
Well, to be honest, I don't think that anything that I've learned, I could say it's bad to put the label of bad on it. Everything I've learned is great because the more learning we do, the better, right? So
Yes.
I think that the #1 thing to go in it's a more serious route, but it's presence. And uh, men come into gentlemen's clubs thinking that they're looking for one thing. In
Mm,
all honesty, they're seeking and they're desiring presence. They just
mm,
want someone to be present with them and see
mm,
them. But that
mm.
that goes for everyone, not just men walking to a gentleman's club. Everybody wants to be seen.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you said that because as I was listening to you just talk about that, I was thinking about my own journey this last, 3, 4 years of really discovering myself. And I'm 31 now, but like my early 20s, if you had asked me what I think I want in a woman, it would have just probably been like physical things like, yeah, big boobs, big butt. I like just want to have sex all the time. But like compared to like last 3, 4 years, where I've realized that like, I have, I want to be seen. I want to be heard. And being in a couple of good conscious relationships where I've realized that I have like way more needs And these needs have nothing to do with like physical or sexual experiences, right? Where like I want to have someone to be like, words of affirmation is one of my like love languages, you know? So yeah, so I've just, and as you were saying that, I was like, that's so interesting that, you know, one would assume, even myself as a man would have assumed that most men go out to these kind of clubs seeking, you know, sexual experiences. But really, you know, they're seeking, you know, to be seen and to be heard and to be understood and someone to talk to, and they can just open up and drop their guard down, right?
Absolutely. There
That,
are a lot of girls who work in gentlemen's clubs, and we joke that we're just, you know, undercover therapists. Because that's what we're doing. We're sitting and we're holding space and we're listening.
mm,
And we are told all of the secrets that nobody else knows because they feel safe and comfortable because nobody else is ever going to hear this
mm.
long, deep, maybe sometimes dark story, you know?
That's interesting. Like there's so many questions that comes off the top of my head here, but like I like to like get deeper also. I'm like, why do you think it's like that? Like I feel like why is it like we live in a world like I'm a big advocate of men expressing their emotions and crying and letting pretty much feeling all feelings, you know? Like if you have the need to cry, cry. Like I'm open to all that. So but I'm always curious, like why do we live in such a world that men are now welcome to express their emotions? Like how did, like, I'm just curious, when in return I feel like talking to someone like yourself, I don't know, you could tell me, but like it's like I feel like most women that I talk to say that a man that can get vulnerable and feelings is actually attractive. It's actually more manly. It's actually, and like, but most men assume the opposite, that are, I don't say most men that are not aware and that are not fully, you know, and it just, yeah, it's interesting. Why do you think it's like that? Because like, you know.
It's interesting. Why it's like that, we could go into a whole deep rabbit hole with that for a really long time. I don't know
Mhm.
if we wanna dive down that one, but we can. Why men are not supposed to show their emotions. Uh, Whether we want to go like conspiracy theory route or we want to
Yeah,
go like the religious
yeah,
route, it could trigger a lot of people.
of
Uh,
course. No, it's so true.
However, the whole idea of men being vulnerable and having emotions, yeah, that's really important. I can say for myself, just my own personal experiences, when I've been in relationships, not long ones, with men who, I mean, there's a polarity thing. Let me just say this first. A man who is super emotional
Yeah,
all the time, that doesn't feel to me safe, or it doesn't feel grounded
yeah,
either.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
there's a different way that women and men express emotions,
yeah.
and there's polarity, and it's important to
Mhm,
have the masculine feminine dynamic, or whatever you want to call it. If you don't want to
mhm,
call it masculine feminine, can't
mhm.
have two people who are super emotional all
Yeah.
the time and
Mhm,
expect to have a stable, consistent, healthy, happy relationship. It just doesn't
mhm.
work. I've
Yeah.
tried that myself with being with a partner that was super like fiery and emotional, and it just, I always felt unsafe, and I felt
Mhm.
unsafe to express my own emotions because I knew that it would turn into this like crazy whirlwind tornado for days.
Yeah.
But I've also been with a man who didn't have any emotions, and I just wanted to shake him, like, do you ever get angry or excited? You
Yeah.
know, so it is really, really important, and I think that we have a more transparent relationship, and we also have a better connection when we're being real. And emotions
Mhm.
are real. We all
Of
have
course.
emotions, and
No,
if
it's
you're
true.
repressing them and blocking them, no matter if you're male or female, they erupt in other ways that are not so pretty.
No, so true. And like you were talking about masculine, feminine energy, and I talk a lot about that on this podcast. So yeah, like you're saying, if it's like if and of course, masculine, feminine energies has nothing to do with gender. It's, you know, just energies. And if it's like most women, their core energies is to be, you know, feminine, and most men, you know, their core energy is they like to be masculine. And like what you were saying there is like if they're both in their feminine energies all the time, and like if a man, his core energy is feminine, which there's nothing wrong with it, but if it's that and he's with a female that's her core energy is feminine, it won't work in the long run. And I'm actually seeing that from, you know, I've seen it too, you know, but yeah, like you're right, it won't work. It's almost like because the masculine and what holds the space. So there has to be one person who actually does, is their core energy masculine, so they're able to hold space for the feminine in that case, right? I was talking about this with some friends yesterday. What I'm curious to hear, do you think men or women are the same? Like I find, no.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, in a very basic human way, yes, we're
Yeah.
all humans, but
Mhm.
no, men and women are completely different. And that's
Mhm.
why we've had male-female relationships since
Yeah.
the beginning of time, because
Mhm.
we're made to be different so that we can balance each other and support
Yeah.
each other and procreate.
Yeah, no, you're so right. Because so we were talking about the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and I read that book, and it's have you read the book?
I've read some of it. I've never
Yeah.
went cover to cover.
So yeah, pretty much. So the book is, yeah, like it really blew my own mind out, because I thought I had the assumption that we were all kind of the same, and but reading that book kind of just blew my own mind up. And I actually, we were talking about a couple of days ago, because I was suggesting it to some friend, and I'm like, yeah, like it's really like it'll blow your mind up, because and it's interesting. I'm like, it's crazy, like how we like don't know, like I myself as well, I'm still learning. I feel like I'm a student, but it's interesting how a man, as in relationships, we don't just know, like if we don't know the woman, like it's interesting. I talk to couples that don't even know their own love languages. It's like it just blows my mind up, and I find it like, I don't know, I just find it interesting how I feel like men, we need to almost take classes on relationships, or like, are we just like to almost to have successful relationships? Or it could be coming from someone like myself, who I grew up with very traumatic childhoods, didn't experience and witness real love with my parents and the relationships that are around me. So maybe that's why I think the way I think, or maybe I don't have the experience that I want to have. um and you work with couples, right? So like, what do you feel like are things that makes a successful couple? And I feel like there's a bunch of them, but I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, it's interesting uh, that there was a little bit of uncertainty while you were saying, oh, maybe men have to learn, uh,
Mm,
but we all have to learn.
mm,
There's no, I can't think of anybody in my life, no one, and I know a lot of people, not to say that I don't, we attract certain types of people.
of course.
I can't think of anybody who says that they have had a perfect example of a relationship from their parents or anybody in their lives.
Mm,
So, yes, we all have to learn, and nobody knows all the answers. It depends on the dynamic of your relationship. It really depends on the wounds that you have, the traumas that you have, your
mm,
own connection with your mother and your father. All
mhm,
of this is playing out in your intimate relationship with your partner
mm,
when we become adults. And a lot of times we are just completely copying what
mm,
happened with one or both of our parents as children in
mm.
our relationships.
Yeah.
So part of the process is breaking that pattern or that cycle and really doing some deep work and digging in and finding out what it is that you're repeating.
Mm,
Um, so yes, there's things that we need to learn. You mentioned uh, the one book, but there's a whole myriad of books, of course, right? I really love David Data's work,
mm,
The Way of the Superior Man. I'm sure you've heard of it.
yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's so many. My friend Dustin Garrick wrote a book, Evolved Masculine. There
Mm,
are so many resources, and
mm,
women also need to read those books,
mm,
the Way of the Superior Man or the Evolved Masculine, and to
mm,
learn as well. And you were mentioning love languages.
yeah.
There's, I think, among the masses, and I don't know because I feel like I live in a little bubble, and
Mhm.
I'm assuming that you do too, since we're connected
Yeah.
right now. But I think on a larger scale, a lot of people see what they think relationships are supposed to be, and
Mm,
you just get into them and you go along and you attempt to not have any arguments and everything's just fluffy and nice, and you make babies and you have a white picket fence and you know, all the things that
Yeah.
relationships are supposed to be. But a conscious relationship is a very different thing. It's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily fun and fluffy and babies and white picket fences.
Yeah.
It's work.
Yeah.
It's therapy. It's, you know,
Mm-hmm.
digging in, and it's supporting each other and holding each other accountable and also holding space for each other. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I do a lot of work with plant medicines and psychedelics, and to me the relationship is a whole nother kind of
Mm-hmm.
almost psychedelic journey. Uh, and it's important that if you really want to explore yourself and expand and grow in this lifetime, which I know that you're on that path as well, and probably anyone who will listen to this and watch
Mm-hmm.
this, uh, it's relationships are work. So you have to read the books and you have to look at the dark things and you
Mm-hmm.
have to look at the past and you have to dig in, and it's uncomfortable and it's not fun. But
Yeah.
when you learn about each other and the love languages and all of the things, it becomes this infinite universe to explore with somebody else, and
Mm-hmm.
it can be so much fun even through all of the heaviness and the darkness.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And like I was thinking about like, yeah, like if you're willing to have the uncomfortable conversations in a relationship, it's interesting that how awesome it turns, you know. It's like the idea of being vulnerable with somebody. And yeah, it's those uncomfortable conversations, those it's crazy what happens. And I'm like someone that wasn't in any conscious relationships in his early 20s to in the last year. So I have been in the last 2 3 years, I've been in one or two, and it has definitely, I've learned so much. And I've realized that like it's like a big mirror, you know, like you could think like myself, I was actually Lana, like I'll tell you, so like I thought I had done all the work and I'm all good, and I was like 27 28, and like, you know, I was like, yeah, like I've done all the work. And then I went to, you know, a lot of the listeners know, so I went to meditation, 10-day silent meditations, and I went on this journey for a year. So led me to, you know, a bunch of therapy and doing a lot of shadow inner child work and the whole 9 years, right? And it's interesting. And then, you know, like actually like my therapist was like, you should like open your heart to a relationship because you're very like just remember you say like, do you ever get mad, do you ever like feel like I was that guy who never got, you know, I didn't have any emotions. And opening myself to that and then getting into like a conscious relationship, like it made me realize how much more work I had to do. Like it was like, you know, like, and it was beautiful actually. That's the thing, it's hard, but those uncomfortable conversations actually lead, like it's interesting. It's like a knot. And like the if two people continuously make an effort to build, you know, a good relationship between themselves, every time they're having those uncomfortable conversations, it's like they're tying a knot between each other where it's only making them closer and closer and closer, you know. But like, yeah, like it's definitely not easy.
No, and it's not supposed to be. And I think that's the maybe some of the lie we've been fed.
Yeah.
And you know, so many children are learning from Disney movies or TV shows, and
Yeah.
I don't think we're getting a good dose of this is what it really looks like. This is the real work.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's really good to go to therapy with your partner and just have like a third party who's neutral to
Yeah.
help you untangle things. Like you were saying, a knot, but there's also this um I think this like ball that we have to unravel as well, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
take the threads away and see what's in there and kind of
Mm-hmm.
explore, because I that's what we're doing, right? That's what this whole life is. We're exploring ourselves
Mm-hmm. And you
and
can,
through and exploring each other.
yeah, and like you can actually, and this is from experience, like you can experience more of yourself in a relation, in a conscious relationship, because you're seeing yourself through them. Like it's interesting. Like every time, you know, I would get triggered, you know, let's say if I was in a relationship, it's like that's only another, you know, moment for me to learn more about myself. And when I started to look at it like that, it led to more journaling and more work and only understanding myself more, because I wasn't, you know, early 20s, like I didn't even know what a trigger was, or I was, you know, somewhere else. Yeah, it's so interesting. And what do you think, based on, like, so what do you actually, curious myself. So like, what are things that you work with? Like you work with couples, and you help them, you do a lot of one-on-one coaching. So what are some things you feel like, or do you help couples with? Like what kind of problems they come to you with in a way, and like, and what is it that, you do? Because, even myself, I'm actually curious to hear.
Yeah, my path has been very colorful and interesting. I was married for, or in a very committed relationship, should I say, because it wasn't the whole 11 years, but 11 years I was with one person, and
Mm-hmm.
he had a son, and we were doing the whole, I was a housewife, soccer mom,
Mm-hmm.
stripper at night.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting life. But during that time, a lot of people would come to both of us and ask for relationship advice because we had been making it work for so long. And honestly, I have to say, one of the most important things that supported our relationship was all the plant medicine and psychedelic work. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge advocate for MDMA psychotherapy and therapy, and uh, him and I would every few months just be alone for a day or two and take
Mm-hmm.
MDMA and go through everything,
Mm-hmm.
address anything that was weighing on us or that we had been holding, and it was incredible therapy. As so many people have said, that specific substance is like 10 years of therapy in one
Mm-hmm.
session, which is like four
Wow.
to six hours. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge advocate for medicine work, as we call it, with your partner. And uh, when we had first gotten together, a big part of our relationship was shifting his health and
Mm-hmm.
me teaching him about holistic living. And then what was birthed out of that was the sensual foodist, which I haven't put a lot of emphasis on or energy into for a while, but it's still very much a part of who I am and what I advocate for. And that's like the basic foundational things of relationship. Like, are you in the kitchen together? And are
Mm-hmm.
you eating well? And are you nourishing your body? Are you taking care of your body?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because that is a reflection of how you care about the other person and how you show your love to them. If you're not taking care of your body, how
Mm-hmm.
can you be in a relationship and really care about that person? Like,
Mm-hmm.
think, I just always think of that, like smoking cigarettes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you give a shit about your partner if you're not willing to give up that thing that you know is deadly, because
Mm-hmm.
they're going to suffer because you're suffering yourself. And it's the same way with food.
Yeah.
You probably didn't expect me to go this direction with this,
No,
but
I like this. I like this.
I just go down to the foundation, the basics,
Mm,
So one of the ways that I was working with couples before was get in the kitchen together, because all of the things that you need to do in the kitchen to cook a meal together it's the microcosm of the macrocosm,
mm,
like teamwork and building something together. Like, if you
mm,
can learn these things in the kitchen, then you bring them outside of the relationship and it
mm,
translates into
mm,
everything that you do.
mm.
So that's still very much a part of how I support people.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't go straight there, but it's underlying, that holistic means the whole everything that you do
Yeah.
in life.
And you were saying about, the kitchen. And so I'm a big, like, I love to cook. And I think that making food is a very sacred, act. And the energy that you put into the food, like, I don't even order takeout, because it's like the energy of the person that was cooking it. I don't know how they were feeling that day and what they were putting in that food. So like, for me, that's why I love to cook. And there's many other reasons, right? And what you were sharing just now was also the concept. It was actually very profound, because so what you're saying is that you're using it as a way for couples to, heal and, get closer. And I totally believe that it works, because first of all, the idea of making food together is already, romantic, and it's a great way to connect. And then on top of that, the community aspect of, I'm very big on community, so the fact that, it's two people now, you're cooking with each other, you're making an act out of it. So yeah, no, I totally with that. And on the aspect of the from another perspective that you were mentioning and the way you look at it, in the aspect of like, I'm a big advocate of living a healthy life, holistic, put the right real food in your body. And then from it's almost like a way to motivate yourself to live a healthier life is like, if I'm in a relationship with someone and let's say I'm not taking care of my body. And Jim Rohn, he actually said this, he was a great philosopher and a motivation speaker, where he's like, uh, the only thing you can do for me is by taking care of yourself. He says it some way like this. And the best thing I can do for you is by taking care of me. And the best thing you can do for me is by taking care of yourself. So it's like, and I was like thinking about that concept of, wow, so I'm in a relationship with someone. If I'm not actually taking care of myself, it's actually a disrespect to that individual, because obviously they don't want to be with someone that's not healthy, that's not taking care of their body, and that's disrespecting this only vehicle that they have, right? So it's so true. It's like a great way to motivate myself now to get healthier and work out and do all these things in a way, which I already do anyways, but I just was sharing that perspective. Like, that's a great perspective, the great way to look at it, right? And also, I was just thinking about this as you were just saying that, is if you are working with a couple and they don't look healthy and they say that they're not healthy, that can tell you a lot about how they feel about not only their relationship, but themselves, right? Because like no aware conscious person is not taking care of their body. Once you realize, like, it kind of like the key to a peaceful, happy life is, first of all, to make sure your vehicle is working, it's thriving and optimized, and then you can do other things. So yeah, like that's great. That's actually a great, like, it's a level of awareness, and I can see why you actually help others. So what's the your book? Actually, I know I had read an ebook that you had a while back. I think I downloaded it. But so tell us a little about the book. I'm curious to hear um
Yeah.
about it.
Well, the book that was mentioned in my bio, it was the #1 Amazon international bestseller. That was a while ago. That was the
Mm,
Conscious Love book that I co-authored with 11 other authors. It was a while ago,
nice.
but right now I've actually just signed the contract. So this is the first time I'm announcing it on a podcast.
Ooh.
Uh, for my memoir. It's
Mm,
basically a memoir, and a lot of it's about the sex industry and being an exotic dancer and the
mm,
experiences I had, and then how I got there. So earlier part of my life, and then the work around plant medicines and psychedelics, and how I've transitioned out of the sex industry and how I'm applying
mm,
what I learned and what I cultivated
mm,
in my life now. And then also a call to action for sex workers and anyone in that industry to
mm,
really claim their power,
mm,
because it's such a powerful position to be in
mm,
when you are utilizing your sexual energy to ignite somebody else. And
mm.
there are so many different ways that can go. You can either destroy that person
Yeah.
that you've captivated,
Mm,
or you can lift them up.
mm,
And towards almost the entire later half of my career in the sex industry,
mm,
I really focused on that because it just felt really fucking good to walk away from that
mm,
and realize that there was no way that anybody would say that I was manipulating them or taking advantage of them, because
mm.
there's, the girls in that industry, um, guys and girls, have a bad rap. Like they're
Yeah,
screwing people over, they're manipulating them
of
there.
course.
And yes, I want to captivate you and have you really engaged with me, so
Mm,
that not so that I can take everything from you, so that
mm,
I can give to you and that I
mm,
can also receive, and we create that conduit of energy, that tantric flow, the microcosmic orbit, so
mm,
that you can walk away feeling like a better person. And in turn, there's a ripple effect, and the world is elevated because we just need more people being on a higher frequency.
and
So
more
about that.
in tune with their sexual energy. What does the word tantra mean to you? Like, what is tantra to you?
Tantra is a lifestyle,
Mm,
whole way of operating in the world from the core of your being. I believe it's a really holistic way of living,
mm,
and it's being in tune with and sensitive to your own energy and other people's, and operating in a way that does elevate other people and respects all
Mm,
forms of life.
mm. Interesting. One would have been listening to the podcast, would have been expecting to hear a whole bunch of things about sex. And it's interesting, even for myself, in in the last year or so, like it's a way of life, I believe. It's like the feelings and the expressions that you actually express sexually, you can penetrate life with that kind of feeling, I believe. You can feel that joy and peace and excitement and all those things, through your life. And do you incorporate tantra into, like your couple counseling and your one-on-one counseling? Like, what do you teach? Like, what do people want, actually, I guess? Because I feel like from my aspects, like people like want to get into tantra because they're like, oh wow, like I want to have sex for longer periods, or or some people like, I want to get deeper with my partner and have more conscious, aware experience with my partner. Those are the only reasons I can think of someone would want to get into tantra. But like, what's your experience with it, or what do you feel like people want from it?
I didn't want to dive right into the sex piece. That's why I didn't mention it yet. But yes, sex. Sex is
Mhm.
everything, and
Yeah.
tantric sex is everything.
Mm.
Having more conscious, connected sexual experiences translates into every facet of life. And
Mm.
that is how I approached it myself. That's how I first started learning Tantra.
Mm.
I had a girlfriend when I was 21 or 22, and she started dating this guy that was a little bit older and really into holistic living and all of these more uh, mystical things and esoteric
Yeah.
practices. I wasn't really there yet, but to some extent, because I've had, I grew up with somewhat hippie parents, and my grandfather was the president of the
Mm.
American Cannabis Society. It wasn't foreign to me.
Mm.
But she said, oh, every time I'm with him, it's just like so erotic and explosive and profound because he practices Tantra and he's
Mm.
teaching me Tantra. And at 21, 22 years old, I didn't really have much of an idea besides my uncle, who's really my mentor and telling
Mm.
me all these things about Eastern philosophy and yoga and meditation. He's been practicing for 40 some years
Mm.
longer. And I said, okay, this Tantra thing, I've got to, I want to have better sex. I want to be with a guy who teaches me Tantra. It just became my overall mission in life and it never went away. That really impacted me, I guess. So
Mm.
when I connected with my husband early on, 22 years old, I said, we can't be together unless you practice Tantra. That
Mm.
was just who I was at 22. And he said, oh, okay. I'll look into it. And I get back home from a trip and he's got like 10 books. He's got all these different PDFs open on his computer. He's purchased me yoni eggs, yoni crystals. He's like,
That's
this is
awesome.
something you need to start practicing with. And we just dove into it from there. That was a part of our entire relationship. We started training with our teachers a couple years later.
Mm.
Um, Freddie and Elsbeth, they're Tantra Nova in Chicago. So I've trained with them for years. And yes, so much of it is
Mm.
about sex
Mm.
because sex and that creative life force energy is the most powerful energy on the planet that we know as humans.
Yeah, very
So
true.
yes, tantric sexual energy, like be conscious with that shit because it can create or destroy the planet.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally feel that. What would you, so how could, someone is listening to this podcast, they're like, how do I get started? Like, how do I get started with Tantra? And I feel like it's almost like you don't even necessarily, if you listen to the podcast and you don't have a partner, it's almost like you could, start a Tantra practice yourself. But as a couple, like, how would you, if someone was like, Lana, how do I start Tantra? How do I incorporate Tantra into my life? What would you say?
This is not going to be exciting, but it's very, very true. So I'm 100% honest.
Okay.
Breath work. Your
Mm.
breath. If you can control your breath, you can control your life. You can
Mm.
control your orgasm, your life force energy, the
Mm.
way that you connect with somebody else, your emotions, your state every day.
Mm.
So learn how to control your breath.
Mm.
And I'll be really, really honest, I haven't mastered this in any way, shape, or form, but
Mm.
I know the profound effects on my life when I am really mindful of the way that I'm using my breath.
Mm.
And in in lovemaking.
Mm,
Breath is everything. If you can't control your breath, it's really, really challenging to practice Tantra. It's the foundation. You know, if you're gonna build a house and you don't have the foundation there, it's not gonna fucking work. Like you
mm-hmm.
have to have the breath as the foundation of all of these practices.
Mm. You know, it's interesting as you were just saying that. I was thinking about like about 2 years ago or so, I guess I was when I discovered Tantra. And in a way, so the idea of it sounds so cool, right? But I remember when I started practicing it with someone, um, we were like, okay, we're gonna do it. Let's say, for example, like this week. And it didn't happen for like 2, 3 months in the sense of when we were going to get sexual. In those moments, the animal, instinct would be in and we would just get into it. And then like after when it's done, and we're like, yeah, Tantra, remember we were gonna do some eye gazing, or remember we were gonna do this, but like we would the discipline wasn't there. And I remember, and then like we had to consciously actually like set the intention for it, where we were like, okay, tonight we're actually going to like sit for 5, 10 minutes, do some eye gazing, like a nice massage. And like we did it. And then like the interesting part is like how much like how much better it gets. It's almost like it's not just only women that need foreplay. It's like even as a man, when you take that time, a half hour, 45 minutes of sitting with your partner, doing some deep breathing exercises and looking into each other's eyes, maybe even verbally saying some things to each other and setting that mood, and then like through there getting into a nice massage, and then that leading to where it leads to, it was so much deeper. The experience was, and it's like, and like I was so glad after, after a couple of months, we're like these days, I'm like, yeah, like I was more actually a fan of it, even though it's like, to build that up, it's like you have to control those animal instincts. You have to actually consciously make the decision. It's almost like Tantra cannot happen if you don't build that awareness, which I guess you build through, breathing exercises. And interesting, it's so simple. Like it's so simple to do these things that can make your life better. Yet, I feel like most people don't even, are not even aware of it, or they're not even making the decision to get after it, right? Like that's so interesting to me.
It's so easy, but it's so challenging because yeah, it's just breath, but it's so much work. I can say through my own experience, I like even I'll go into something like very, personal. Like
Hmm.
when I climax or have an orgasm, even I, after practicing for over a decade and having all of this knowledge, I'm thinking to myself, oh, why aren't you fucking breathing right now? Like
Hmm.
it's a conscious, like you said, a very conscious practice. You have to always be mindful of it. And
Hmm.
eventually, yes, you start to integrate things and it becomes part of you.
Hmm.
But it's constantly focusing where you want to focus. It's so easy to just let the mind go where it easily goes where we've been conditioned to let it go.
Hmm.
That's the easy thing. Just, all right, well, that's where my mind went. But no,
Hmm.
you have to turn your attention, focus, and energy to that conscious space where you're really focusing on your breath and you're slowing down. And we are creatures that are in this Western world. We're going really fast and we're trying to do all the things and we have all these aspirations, but really
Hmm.
we just need to slow the fuck down.
Hmm.
And I think that's the part that's really, really hard for a lot of
Yeah.
people, including myself, and slowing your breath down and just being present. And
Hmm.
it's the thing that I first teach when I'm with somebody in a gentleman's club. We go back to a champagne room, private room, or whatever, if they're
Hmm.
open to it and they're present enough, like they're not incredibly intoxicated or fatigued because they're in Las Vegas. I say, you want
Hmm.
to learn some tantra? We're gonna just breathe together, and it
Hmm.
blows their mind. A few
Hmm.
times people have opened their eyes and said, "Okay, this is enough. I don't need to spend the rest of the hour with you. Just I'm gonna go now because I've like really gotten something out of being in this dynamic and being in this club." And I say, go home and try this with your wife, your girlfriend.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you're here. You're not feeling connected with your partner. You're looking for something else. Like, just go home and breathe with her. Like,
Hmm.
slow down and really pay attention.
Hmm. It's so interesting we're talking about this right now, because before this, I posted a video on Instagram and I was talking about, all my life, I was always chasing happiness. Like, yo, when I hit this goal, or when I get this, or when I do this, I will be happy. And then only in the last 2-3 years where the perspective has changed, where I've, instead of chasing happiness, I'm more like just focused and paying attention and being in the present moment and paying attention to all the feelings that come up. Simply just paying attention, which makes me more present. And by paying attention to all the feelings, welcoming all expressions from me, whether it's tears, sadness, anger, paranoia, happiness, and just letting it be and not really necessarily chasing happiness, it has made me happier. It has led to more, peace and joy and happiness because of, by simply paying attention. And the reason why I'm sharing this right now is because like deep breathing exercises is something I do a lot, and always, making sure that I'm conscious of my breathing, and I've, used it to heal, different things in my life and different traumas. And yeah, like it's so important. Like and I can see why it's so important, but like and then I can see why it's hard for couples to do it in their, sex life, because usually during those moments, it's like the animal primal instincts that just come in, and like in those moments, it gets so much heat and passion that you forget about the whole, like, oh, we were going to sit 10 minutes and we were going to meditate, or we're going to do this with each other to set the mood tonight or whatever. And then it's like, oh, none of that, like just get to it. Which I think couples who can, get to that as well, like obviously they don't have anything wrong if they have that much passion that they can just, get into it and, not even need anything in the sense of deep breathing exercises or these exercises, right? Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I know every time I'm doing these podcasts, especially even today, like I'm learning and my mind is expanding more, like it's yeah, it's interesting. So tell me, actually, what's one way, or what's one way actually, yeah, a man or woman are different in your opinion? This might make you think, because even I'm like, I'm curious to know.
What first popped in my head is just a relationship dynamic between
Mm,
male, female, or masculine, feminine energy. It doesn't have to be male, female.
mhm,
Is the role of the masculine energy as this grounded safety,
mhm,
and then there's a different sort of nurturing energy from the female, and also this really beautiful thing that I've learned from some teachers in the past is the woman like holding the vision
mm,
uh, for the relationship and
mm,
the man supporting it. Not that a man can't have a vision for the relationship, but it
mm,
really does fall apart when the woman doesn't have the vision for the relationship.
mm,
So it's like a balancing act, like you maintain your role, I maintain mine, and then we're able to grow and
mm,
create together. So I know I'm not answering exactly, you're
mm.
talking about the actual differences. I
Yeah.
think that they're going to be different for me too, and what I experience in my relationships, but I'll just revert back to there are so many great teachers on this, like
Mhm,
the David Data and John Gray.
mm.
That's the book, right? The
Yeah.
author of that book. He has a really great podcast, by the way. Just one episode. He doesn't have his own podcast, but he
Okay.
did one episode, the author of that book,
Mm,
and he talks about female orgasm and just like sexual dynamic, and it's so good. So all of his content is amazing
mm,
about this polarity and balance. The men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
mm.
So good. It continues to unfold his incredible content.
I'm like, I was like thinking in my head, I'm like, ooh, podcast guest. Sounds like someone I want to reach out to.
Oh yeah, you do. If you want to go over that whole thread again, that people need that information. I've sent it to so many people. So
Mm.
yeah, that orgasm episode.
I'll definitely listen to it. So I last year, before, I think it was around the pandemic, but I didn't fully settle. Then I know you were traveling a lot with a lot of your soul sisters. So out of all the states that you've been in the US, what would you say is your favorite place that you would stay in if you could live?
Wow, I'm going there right
We're
now.
like in Arizona. You were like in Arizona for a while, and I love Arizona. I've been to, like, so myself, I've been to Michigan, Colorado a little bit, Las Vegas, Arizona, Salt Lake City. And for me, out of the stuff that I've seen, I'm like, I just want to live in Arizona. Like it just looks And it's coming from a Canadian who experiences, 4 or 5 months, 6 months of snow. But like Arizona is like where I would live. But yeah, that's why I was like, I wonder where your favorite is.
Yeah, that's a great question. I am from Wisconsin, so I know how you feel because I've experienced like 9 months of horrible weather for 20 years of my life, you know? Um, but it can also be sweet sometimes. I love it when it snows. And I've been in California for so long, so of course I want to say that California is great. But right now, California is a little weird. I'll just be really honest. I've been to Miami quite a few times now,
Mm,
and I'm really loving South Florida.
mm,
I haven't been to Arizona much in this past, I'd say like 7 months or so. I haven't been there.
mm,
But I know it's great. Sedona is great. And Austin.
mm.
Yeah, a lot of people are making the move to Austin, Texas. I do have a lot of my belongings are there because I was planning on moving there, but I never did. I'm still in Southern California.
Mhm. Southern California. So is that more like, the hippie part of California? Is that where like all the meditation? Actually, you know what? I don't. I have a question that it kind of like it keeps coming to me. So you said psychedelics. So like so any MDMA and is any what else? Like mushrooms, ayahuasca. Like what else have you done actually or experimented with?
Yeah, it's funny that you went from the hippie part of California to that. I'm actually a little bit more north. I'm not in Encinitas, Carlsbad, that area,
Okay.
San Diego. I'm really close to LA.
Oh,
So
okay.
you know LA. Everybody knows LA. But I was living in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area for a while, and that's when I really got integrated into the plant medicine and psychedelic community because there's a boatload of it's just endless what's going on there
Mhm.
in the more academic space.
Mhm.
And the school that I went to, CIIS, California Institute of Integral Studies,
Okay.
they launched the first psychedelic psychotherapy certificate program
Mm.
um, to send people into the clinical trials,
Mm.
where they're getting plant medicines and psychedelics legalized for therapeutic use. Work with MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They're based in Santa Cruz, which is really right up there in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Mm.
And I started psychedelictimes.com with my partner of 11 years. We're no longer together, but Psychedelic Times is still going strong and great resource for information
Mm.
from all the way back 2015. And now have just launched Entheo Ventures with my current partner. So we're supporting companies that are in the psychedelic space
Mm.
and just supporting them in optimizing and scaling, growing. And yeah, I have, if you're wondering what I've tried, you can probably name them all. I've probably tried them all.
Have you done
uh,
ayahuasca?
mhm. Yeah, I've sat with that medicine quite a few times,
Mm.
definitely more than 40. I've kind of lost count.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I've experienced many ayahuasca ceremonies and have a beautiful relationship with that medicine.
Mm. It's interesting because I'm not gonna say I'm familiar with ayahuasca, but I'm aware of ayahuasca, and I'm planning on going to ayahuasca ceremony in September of 2022. So it's happening in like a while. Um, but yeah, no, I'm very familiar with Mama ayahuasca. I say, where like, so out of all the ones that you have done, so I'm assuming you've done mushrooms, right? Like, okay, out of all the ones that you have experienced, which one you feel like it's helped you on your healing journey the most? Because for me, I'm taking or going to an ayahuasca ceremony because of the healing, and I've heard that I've watched enough documentaries and all those things on it. And same thing with microdosing. The last couple of weeks, I've actually been experimenting with microdoses and just experiencing how it is. And I'm coming from somewhere where I took on the route of meditation and compassionate journaling and even not touching psychedelics for a long time, and did it more like in a manual, holistic approach of just myself doing this work. and crying the tears and feeling the emotions and all those things, to where in the last few months, and I have opened myself up to more of it. And it's interesting what it does, and it enhances a lot of things. But what for you has been like the one that led to the most healing in your experience?
Wow, that's a great question and a big question because I
Mm,
don't know if I can pick one because it's just been the journey and the integration of all of them. I could say that for sure Iboga was very profound.
mm.
We heard of Iboga?
No, I was gonna ask, what is that?
Yeah, it is the root bark of a shrub from West Africa, Gabon,
Okay.
and they use this medicine as their sacrament. And most recently, a lot of people are using it for addiction treatment
Mm,
because it's been found to be the world's most powerful addiction interrupter.
mm,
There's studies being done, but as of now, we're thinking that ibogaine or iboga prunes the neurotransmitters back to the pre-addictive state. So
mm,
someone who is trying to get off opiates or anything that they've been addicted to
mm,
has the opportunity to experience the medicine, the
mm,
Iboga, which is a 3-day journey. It's
mm,
very intense,
mm,
very, very intense. Um, and there's no withdrawal symptoms afterward. So that is profound and unheard of. There's no other way that I know of that somebody can stop taking opiates after years of abuse and they have no withdrawal symptoms.
mm.
So Iboga is a huge one, really
Smoke
powerful.
it. How do you take it?
It is you can chew the root bark. There are some ceremonies where you do it like that, like the Bwiti tribe in Gabon. That's how they use it. But
Mm,
there's also clinics who are doing just the isolated alkaloid, the ibogaine,
mm,
and you're just getting like a pill of white powder that is dosed depending on your weight and what situation you're in. Um, and then you go through this 9+ hour journey, and there's a day after where you're still not fully back, and then a day after where you need to integrate. It's a
mm.
huge journey. uh what is the name of the film? It's terrible, I'm blanking on it, but there's actually a documentary right now about
Okay.
Iboga, and
Mm,
it's worth watching for anyone because so many of us know somebody who's going through addiction. And I did not use it for that. I
mhm,
didn't have an addiction. I used it for trauma. It's
mm,
also really healing for trauma,
mm,
because you can imagine if you're pressing the reset button, no matter what you're pressing it for, you're getting to that place and you feel this sense of peace, and you're able to step back from all of the trauma, the problems, the situations, and look at them from another perspective. And
mm,
I think that's the power of any plant medicine or psychedelic. It gives you the opportunity to look at things from a witness perspective, an observer perspective, as opposed to being in it and
mm.
just like swimming in it. You can like jump out of the swimming pool and look at it instead of like wading in the water. And that's all of them. That I've found that with ayahuasca as well, and 5-MeO-DMT and psilocybin. There's so much great content out there right now. Fantastic Fungi with Paul Stamets and
Mm.
Louis Schwartzberg. Incredible documentary to learn about the power of psilocybin and fungus. That
Mm.
incredible resource for healing.
Yeah, you definitely have me curious as well.
Right.
I'm always learning more. Which one of these, psychedelic was like the highest or the longest high? I'm like in my like I know ayahuasca is like 12 hours or something. Is there yeah, like I'm curious, how long does the MDMA last, or the different ones that you've done? Is ayahuasca the longest one?
No, not at all. Ayahuasca is generally 4 to 6.
Mm, okay.
But during a ceremony, you can take multiple doses per se. So
Mm,
you're going up to the curandero, curandera, and they're giving you another shot glass, and you're
mm,
going in deeper. It's going to extend your journey. But if you
uh,
just take the one dose,
mm,
it can be as low as 4 hours, 4 to 6
mm,
hours. For me, someone who's super sensitive, I'm just all in forever. Like everything's long for me.
mm.
But Iboga is the longest,
Mm,
because it can literally be days that
okay.
you are in an altered state. Definitely over 10 hours for just
Oh,
one minimum effective dose.
is that only in Africa, or do they have these ceremonies and this psychedelic, I guess we would call it, in other countries?
So it's in a gray area in Canada. Actually, you can find clinics in Canada.
Mm,
But yeah, you generally have to go outside of the US. So Costa Rica has a clinic, Mexico, Australia. Obviously, that's not an option for most people right now.
mm,
But yeah, it is a Schedule One substance in the United States, like all of these plant
mm.
medicines and psychedelics. So you're not going to find any uh, legal Iboga ceremonies in the US unless you are connected to the whole underground network, which is massive,
Yeah,
as
of,
you may assume.
of course. No, that's interesting. So what would Lana do if she has 6 months to live?
Oh, wow. Lots of travel.
Lots of travel.
Iboga, for
Mm.
sure. Do that again. And just be with family and loved ones and maybe do something really extreme like go blow up Auschwitz. This is really ridiculous, but I'm saying that we call it Auschwitz. Like there's a
Okay.
community of people who do it. You drive to Northern California or Southern California, either way, you're driving on this route to go
Okay.
Southern California, and there's this huge factory farm with all of these cows, like thousands of cows, I swear, so many cows, and it smells rancid, putrid,
Mm.
horrible, and I just want to set all those cows free. So
Yeah.
it's really like radical and extremist, but something like that. Okay, I'm going anyway, so like
Yeah.
I'm putting this factory farm out of business. Like let those fucking cows be free. Like
Uh,
whether they die because they're having a shit life anyway, or like they run out to their pasture somewhere far away, something radical like that. I'm not going to go into like politics, government, whatever, but first would be Auschwitz. We're getting rid of Auschwitz. Those cows do not deserve to be on a factory
I
farm
love that. I can just see you setting up a big
anymore.
army of people like, guys, on this date, we're going to this farm and we're letting out all these cows.
We're setting the cows free. Oh gosh, it's not just the cows, it's like so many things. I'm like super connected to like the whole, all the aspects of incarceration because my father is a four-time convicted felon. Like I'm ready to like set everyone free. Just
Yeah.
the system is fucked. It's been fucked for a long time. We have to change it. Like
Mhm.
tear down the structures because they
Of
suck.
course.
We
No,
need to
I
build new
feel
ones.
that. We
I
can all, we,
probably didn't expect the like super radical extreme answer to that.
we can, I'm sure, I feel like, we can all do our part to help and
Blow up Auschwitz.
raise everybody's vibrations as a collective. And then we can all go and free the cows
Yes, free the cows.
and the chickens and
All of them, everyone, like all living beings who are really living in, a confined situation.
which they're not supposed to. Uh, I just want to say, Lana, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. Definitely, I believe that listeners are going to take some value and also, take some entertainment away. So I am truly, truly grateful for that. And just let everybody know where they can find you. And I'll add that details to the podcast. Yeah, let them know where they can find Lana.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so on social media on Instagram, I am Lana Shay is my handle, and my website is lanashay.com.
Mm.
I'm sure they'll be able to click a link or whatever. Those are my main places, and I should be popping up in more places soon as I promo this book and we get going with the publishing process. So
Mm.
yeah, my new endeavor and Theo Ventures, you'll find that through my main Instagram too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'll add those details into the thing, and just want to say as we finish off this podcast, and I want to set some intentions, and one of my intentions are for you guys to really start paying attention, start paying attention and living in the present moment. And another intention I like to set as I finish this podcast is that process of paying attention and being present, I really believe it's so valuable because you start to truly live your life the way you're supposed to. The past is just your memory and the future is just your imagination. And I believe that once we start living in the present moment and truly experiencing this life in the present moment, which is the only moment that we have, we can start to live a very full life, very exciting life. And yeah, with that being said, I'll see you guys till the next episode. And until then, stay an aware alpha.